Chapter 18. Put a figurehead over the front door and a brace of smokestacks on the roof, and you could have sailed Rocco DeGreasy's place across the North Atlantic. I made a quick count of the windows as I strolled up to the front door. I hit 18 and still had 2 floors to go. I suppose there must have been a doorbell, but I didn't feel like spending half an hour searching for it among the gewgaws carved around the entryway. I hammered the door with my fist instead, setting off a resounding echo inside. The butler who opened the door must have come as an accessory to the house, since his face had the same smooth, pasty white texture as the granite walls outside. When he saw me standing there on his front stoop, he crinkled up his nose the way a dowager would when passing a garbage can. He offered to take my hat. I told him I didn't trust him with it. He ushered me into a living room only slightly smaller than the tenement apartment where my mother had raised her 4 kids. He told me Madame would join me shortly, and retired. Jessica came in, carrying one of those toon cats that looked like Felix, and came in any color from chartreuse to candy apple. This one matched her violet eyes. Jessica wore a clingy pastel green number. I would have expected someone with her sense of the dramatic to play the morning role to the hilt and go with black. Of course, the outfit she had on did cover her from ankle to shoulder, and maybe she considered that to be penance enough.
Mr. Valiant,
she said with a seductive voice. She held out her hand a little too high to shake and a little too low to kiss, but just about the right height to pat my head if I bowed down before her.
a pleasure to see you again. Whatever can you be investigating now? I'm sure being a detective, you know that your client is dead.
I left her hand hanging there in midair and let her figure out what to do with it. Dead or not, he paid me for 3 days' work, and I mean to give him his money's worth.
How do you propose to do that?
She asked. She set her cat down on the floor. It proceeded to amuse itself by conjuring up some mental mice, which it stalked around the room. I sat down on the sofa. Rocco had a humidor of expensive cigars set on the coffee table. I opened it and helped myself to a fistful, figuring Rocco didn't need them anymore. I put one of them into my mouth, fired it up, and sucked it to life. For starters, I aimed to prove that Roger never killed Rocco. Instead of taking a chair, Jessica kicked off her shoes, sat on the floor at the end of the coffee table, and rested her hand against the arm of the sofa not 6 inches from my knee.
You've got a long uphill struggle here, Mr. Valiant. From what the police tell me, it's a straightforward case. Roger had a motive. They found the murder weapon in his house. What have you got? New evidence? If so, it had better be pretty good.
No new evidence. Nothing except the basic belief that Roger didn't have what it takes to kill somebody.
Whatever gave you that idea?
My vast experience with human nature. She laughed softly.
All well and good. Except remember, we're talking about a rabbit here.
It works pretty much the same way.
You're the detective.
She reached into an alabaster box and pulled out a violet cigarette that also exactly matched her eyes. Some people just don't know when to quit. She lit her colored coffin nail, set it into the ashtray, and promptly forgot about it. It smoldered into eternity, silently begging for one more touch from her gorgeous lips. Just for laughs, I said. Let's you and me assume Roger didn't kill Rocco.
All right, I'll play. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, Roger didn't kill Rocco. Where do we go from here?
We draw up a list of who else might have.
That would be a pretty long list. Half the civilized world, and at least that many aborigines.
She placed her hand on mine, and my heart went pity-pat. Can you believe it? Pity-pat. She should register those hands as deadly weapons.
Rocco was not a well-loved man,
she told me.
As I'm sure you discovered already, His stars resented their ironclad contracts and the way he continually pushed them to the limits of their endurance.
So we've got everybody who worked for him. Who else? What about the financial end of it? Who's going to inherit his estate? When she shook her head, her hair brushed across my fingertips and gave me the same tingle you get when somebody runs a feather across your stomach.
I don't know for sure. Rocco and I never discussed the matter. I suppose the bulk of his estate will go to his son, Little Rock.
Tell me about him. She laughed again. But there wasn't much mirth to it.
I think you could safely count him out as a suspect. Little Rock couldn't kill a fly. He lacks the drive and sense of purpose necessary to plan it and bring it off.
That's why we have second-degree murder, the unpremeditated variety, for people who are too lazy to plan ahead. She shrugged, and one side of her dress slipped down to reveal her shoulder. You know if Rocco had any recent business dealings with anyone with the initials SS?
SS? No, not that I can recall.
I found snapshots of some stolen artwork in Rocco's office downtown. He ever mentioned anything about such stuff to you?
Not a word.
I blew my next question at her across the red-hot tip of her dead lover's fine cigar. And where were you when Rocco died? Her eyes sparkled. Toons can do that with their eyes. Usually it comes across affected and ridiculous, but when she did it, it made me want to cuddle her and coo inanities into her ear.
I hope you don't suspect me of killing him.
I haven't knocked anybody off the suspect list yet. She shrugged again. To my dismay, the other side of her dress held the line.
I went to a movie and then for a walk. I went alone and no one saw me. I came home around 12:30 and found Rocco dead in his study. I immediately called the police. In practical terms, I have no alibi, but I also have no motive.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
You mind if I take a look at the scene of the crime?
The police already went over it.
The police have been known to miss things before. Jessica standing up reminded me of a skyrocket heading for outer space. One long, straight line of fire and smoke.
Sure, go ahead. It's just across the hall there.
I went inside Rocco's study. The place was filled, top to bottom, with shelves containing probably every comic book Rocco had ever produced. From what the cops had told me, after being shot, Rocco had fallen forward across his desk, though I didn't see how he found room. He had enough doodads on top of the desk to stock 100 novelty toy shops. Most of them were little plastic or rubber wind-up contraptions depicting the toons in his stable. I found Roger Rabbit. I twisted his tail, set him down, and he hopped from one side of the desktop to the other. The toy appeared to be discolored. When I picked it up and examined it closely, I saw it had Rocco's blood on its paws. Good thing I wasn't much on mystical significance. I poked through the desk drawers until I found Rocco's checkbook. I opened it and examined the last few stubs. He had written 3 checks yesterday. The first 2 were for $10,000 each. The stubs indicated both had been paid to the mysterious SS. The third and last stub indicated a check to a downtown art dealer, the High Tone Gallery of Comic Art. I did some mental arithmetic and figured out that the amount of this check equaled the sum total of the prices marked on the stolen artwork photos I had found in Rocco's office. I poked around some more inside his desk, checked behind his pictures, rifled through about 100 of his comics, and even looked under his rug. I was just about to give up when I struck pay dirt in the fireplace. A small scorched piece of comic book negative stuck up through the grate. The negative contained an issue number but no title. I put the scrap into my notebook and rejoined Jessica in the living room.
Find anything?
She asked. She held up a crystal decanter. I nodded, and she poured us each a double jigger. Nothing. I guess the police took away everything of any importance.
That it for the grilling then?
Not quite. We've still got another murder to go. I demolished my drink and built myself a second. Where were you when Roger died? She marched her delicate fingers around the edge of her glass.
Still walking the streets.
Not past Roger's house by any chance.
Nowhere near.
You know Roger mentioned you in his last words.
So the police told me.
Any idea what he meant by it?
None.
She put her untouched drink down beside her untouched cigarette. If she kept up at this rate, pretty soon she wouldn't have a vice left in the world and no idea how she got so pure.
I know you and the police both consider me a prime suspect in Roger's murder,
she said.
But I'm not worried. Why should I be? I'm totally innocent.
So said half the guys on death row, but I didn't tell her that. I fished around a while longer, but came up with nothing new, so I got up to go. On the way to the door, she moved in very close to me, so close I could feel her breath warming my throat when she turned her head to speak.
I'm rather sorry the interrogation's over,
she said.
You fascinate me, Mr. Valiant. I've never met a man quite like you. I hope you'll come back and see me again, when you can stay a bit longer.
She flashed me a smile torchy enough to illuminate a midnight fertility dance. I wanted to kid myself into believing her, but no dice. Granted, she had married a rabbit, and I had to be better than that, but no way I could ever picture myself a winner in this girl's romantic sweepstakes. She wanted something else from me. I didn't have to wait long to find out what.
Since you're going to keep pursuing this case anyway,
she purred,
there's a favor you might be able to do for me.
Name it, I said, surprised at how hard I found it to talk without gasping.
During my marriage to Roger, the two of us once bought an antique at auction. I always had a special fondness for it. Roger told me to take it with me when I left, but I forgot it. I would like very much to retrieve it before the courts dispose of Roger's personal belongings. I asked the police about it, but they told me that there was no such object in the house. I wonder if you should come across it during your investigation. Could you see that I get it? It has a great deal of sentimental value to me.
What is this object? I asked, although I already had a pretty fair idea what her answer would be.
Nothing particularly valuable. An antique tea kettle. Roger kept it on the stove in his kitchen.
Sounds simple enough. I'll see what I can do.
I would appreciate it. A great deal.
To show me just how much a great deal could be, she kissed me full on the lips. She tasted of rose petals and honey. Her tongue caressed mine like a cool breeze on a steamy night. She let me go and stepped back from me with a self-satisfied smile on her face that told me she thought she had my number. I have a hunch the lustful smirk on my face told her she was absolutely right. Whatever that tea kettle turned out to be, I knew who had first dibs on it in my book.